Today we have IT Director and Technology Leader Vani Gopalan speaking to us on change management. Vani, as we call her, inhabits many roles in the organization. She, on one hand, is the COE and the technology leader. On the other, she's the mentor to the IT professionals and making them seamlessly get into the corporate world. She has been recognized in 2023 as as one of the top 10 tech leaders. And she has been with her passion, the way she speaks about technology in these forums, her passion with which she delivers her technology projects is pretty evident. So she has a proven track record of handling end-to-end IT enablement for organizations. So if I want, I can go on for Vani. But Vani, today, thank you for coming here and speak to us on change management.
It's my pleasure, Sudeshna, for being here. And I'm truly excited to speak to you about change management and my journey with change management. Thank you.
Great, great. So in all your roles or your role as a technology leader, how much of it is with transformation?
I would say transformation is every day, being in the IT field, right? And change management has really set the tone, not only for me, but the entire organization and the IT, on the whole, on what transformation is all about and how change actually helps to transform, maybe digital or any kind of organizational initiative that is.
Great. So in the so when so from after you got introduced to change management, I know you've been always using it, but when you're formally introduced to change management, how have you made kind of use of it in your large scale transformation?
All right. So when an organization actually creates a vision of making a change or a bigger transformation, I think the whole process or the thought process itself changes. So wearing different hats as a technology leader versus sponsor versus mentor or person who is actually driving the project in itself, change management really gives you a very good insight on what your role is going to be versus when there is no change in existence, right? So bringing ProSci and the EDCA model has actually gave me a good expertise on how do I make sure people understand what is in it for them, because today everyone talks about change and change is the only thing that is permanent. So when they talk about change in technology, there's a lot of fear that comes automatically, and the project management itself focuses pretty much on the technology aspect, like how do you deliver, and it stops there. This is what even I have learned as a technology leader when I was not introduced to change management. But after having learned change management for so many years, I feel that there is a people aspect to project as well, and this is about how people adopt, how they retain the knowledge, and also how they actually sustain. So when we talk only about project management, we some way forget about sustainability, and that's where the change management, integrating change management into project management practice, actually makes everything that you do to successful. So I would say you need to properly have these both processes married to each other to
Mhm.
ensure the great life after the marriage. So that is where I see. And when if you really ask me, like, where do I incorporate change management? Honestly, Sudeshna, I would say every aspect of my personal life too. Like, I picked up driving, last week,
Mhm.
and that's where I actually sat and did ADCAR. Like, yeah, awareness, I need it. So the desire should come from me. I don't want someone to force me, right, to go ahead and get for my classes. So that is exactly what happens in an organization as well. And let me just quote you an example of one of the major project that we did during COVID, and that was a great example how change can be incorporated anywhere, in whatever phase it is, right? So it was completely remote. People had no
Yeah.
flexibility to meet each other. People didn't know each other, and this change has had to happen. No two ways about it. So the communication strategy that we built and the four dimension of integrating the change management into project management, like people, process, tools, and results. So everywhere See, change is nothing but being prepared for the worst, right? So being prepared at every phase, you're being prepared, you're preparing yourself. Okay, so what is going to happen if people resist about change? We already know that there is going to be resistance. We already know, like, people are going to get saturated and burnt out if you are not communicating
Yeah.
certain things in a certain way. And there are going to be naysayers. They're going to say, like, no, this is not going to work. So, how are you actually imbibing all these things together in a structured approach? How are you evaluating that? How many people are okay for this change? And
Mm-hmm.
how even communicating this to people in terms of what is your communication strategy? Like, some people understand in a certain way. So, how is your communication style? Like, is it looks like a very force on them, or is it like easy for people to absorb and walk along with the change? So those are the deciding factors that really help. Versus, when I was a project manager without knowing any change management concepts, I always struggled and felt like, okay, so how do I put all these pieces together? And imagine during the COVID situation when we were on a biggest technology upgrade,
Mm-hmm.
impacted almost every employee of the organization and every departments, all the C-suite level. Without change management, I can only tell you, like, we would have failed. But what kept us together was, having adopting the change management methodologies, making sure there's a stakeholder analysis. Like, people are going to resist. So who is the person who's going to support your change? Who's the person who's going to be a change averse, and how do you really deal with them? And speaking to the sponsors also played a very vital role. Like the C-suite level leaders play a very vital role when you drive these transformational projects. And it's not about you drive the change and you just initiate a change and you sit back. It's about
You have
how
to
you
be.
walk along. So it has been phenomenal, I can tell you, with change management. And like I said, it's like a everyday journey for anyone who is practicing change in their life.
Great. So, if I ask you, like, while implementing, I can well understand from a project management perspective and a change delivery perspective, adoption perspective, you were very benefited with the change management framework. But what about in the change, the others? Do you think they also feel benefited with change management? That also, which segment do you think, the stakeholders are also impacted by change management?
Okay, so what I can tell you is, like, when people understand the why behind the change and the direct impact on their work, that's when they get more involved and invested. They feel invested. So if you ask me honestly, like, which part of the organization is benefited with the change, I would say the entire organization. And employees are the assets of the organization because they are the
Mhm.
one who does the work. So I think the first and foremost people or the area that gets impacted is the employee, because they know what is in it for them. And once they feel they are involved, they feel invested. And
Mhm.
the second thing that I would say is, even Prosci research actually advocates and tells that once you implement or incorporate change management in your project management methodologies, your outcome actually you're 6 times more likely to achieve success in your outcome, right? And you're
Yeah.
also at least 3 times you're more likely to be within the budget or within the timelines. So at least the projects that I've handled at Flowserve, I can proudly say that we were within the budget, on time, and of course, a phenomenal outcome with great user experience. And I can proudly say that it all happened because of the marriage between the change management and project management.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
you have your lessons learned, and I have to admit that. But the lessons learned is also something that you already know. Like, this is what is going to come up, and you have to have this as a homework for you to sustain the model and how people are
Correct.
adopting it in future. So I would say
True.
it's the entire organization that is getting benefited.
Yeah.
And Yeah, so just to add on to that, we I would also advocate that there should be a dedicated change management team that focuses on this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That is a very important point you said, that there should be a dedicated resource. And in spite of that dedicated resource, you are saying that still you are within your budget. So
absolutely,
sometimes it is always told that, if you bring in a dedicated, meaning you are increasing the cost of the project, but you are still within the budget. So that's kind of remarkable. And in terms of, you also mentioned that, you were sponsors in a few projects there. So as a leader, what changed for you after you incorporating change management?
as a leader, it gave me a it gave me a thought process to step back and think like why things can also fail, right? So what is that you need to do proactively, like when your active participation as a leader, and
Mhm.
you need to be active and visible in the project,
Yes.
through the project. You can't just have your name on the project management slide saying that okay, you're the sponsor, you don't do anything about it. So that is something I've learned, like sponsor, though it's a big responsibility, it's a huge responsibility, but there comes your active involvement as well throughout the project. And I think communication is key for sponsors. So when there is resistance for change, when there is saturation, when you see there is lack of participation from various stakeholders, I think that's when the sponsors have to be there to communicate and really advocate for the change that is being driven through the organization. So that is something which is key that I learned, and where you need to step in and step back. So you can't micromanage the project, but you need to be there throughout the phase, in making sure that you are, overseeing things from a very high
Yes.
level.
And removing the roadblocks. You are, meaning it is just that you're not resourcing and moving back, but you are there throughout.
Absolutely.
So that's great. And I think what you are saying is kind of very, very relevant from people who are doing the projects and as well as leaders of the change. So to conclude, what would be your advice to this technology leaders, I would say?
I think that as a change practitioner, there are a lot of things that you can do, but there are three success mantras that I would like to offer, which I use it day in and day out when I manage change. Number one is communication. So you need to involve yourself early and very often. That is the
Mhm.
key to success. And how do you do it? Strategize a very effective communication plan. Use the language that is understood by people, which like it could be cultural impact in it, and then based on the people or based on the levels of the people, and then what makes it easy for people to understand. Like I said, only when people feel involved, they feel invested. So it should be like involving them, and as
Mhm.
a leader, you play a very vital role. And this goes without saying, like communication is key. And second thing is, whichever change that comes into your life and in your leadership journey, see how you can incorporate your change management into project management. And this is a conscious effort that every leader has to make right from the inception of the project, right? So a lot of people ask questions like, okay, so you talk a lot about change management. So which area do you integrate change into? For me, I would say like you integrate right from the beginning. You have your budget. When you do your budget allocation, you also include a change management team budget as well. And because that is about adoption, your people side of a change comes into only through when you bring in change management. Otherwise, you're going to just be focusing only about technology, and some aspect the is going to get missed out. So that is, I think, as leaders, we have to ensure that change management and project management is brought in together. And like I said, work very closely with sponsors. I think that's the biggest lessons learned I have seen from various projects where uh, we as leaders, we think like, let's not go ahead and disturb the sponsors, and let's not tell them each and everything,
Mhm.
right? So always, I would always advise the leaders to keep the sponsors informed about your budget status, your timelines, and if there's any scope creep or whatever comes in, like the change, if you see any resistance for change, keep them informed so that they can be, you can leverage their strength and
Yes.
power throughout the
Mhm.
journey. So that is
Mhm.
going to help you. And these are like success mantras. So you don't have to feel let down of yourself, like if you're involving your leaders into the project. So have that open communication, and you be the first adopter of the change.
Yeah, walk the talk. Yep.
Yeah. So people actually, they get confused if your body language and if your words doesn't match. So you have to actually play that role model, and you need to be the cheerleader sometime. When we identify personas
Mhm.
in change management, you should be the first person where people really demonstrate the change by looking at you. So change is actually interesting, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, too many things, but yes, and interesting.
Absolutely.
So that was a beautiful way you ended, Vani. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sudeshna.